Pleasant environment. Get ready for a healthy activity. Friendly atmosphere yields tremendous output. Poor surroundings. Challenges of today's world. Melting glaciers. Global warming is increasing.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे एंड आई वेलकम यू ऑल हियर टुडे टू द 14th लेक्चर ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी। स्टूडेंट्स आज लेक्चर का आगाज़ करते हैं एक कोट से जो मैंने चंद दिन पहले ही पढ़ा है एंड दिस कोट कम्स फ्रॉम अ ग्रेट अमेरिकन नॉवेलिस्ट हुज नेम इज मार्क ट्वेन। द कोट एक्चुअली गोज इन योर फेवर ऑल्सो। इट सेज आई नेवर लेट स्कूल्स डिस्टर्ब माई एजुकेशन। Well, I was able to connect with this quote from the environmental psychologist's point of view. You might have been thinking that everybody, all the students usually come to dislike their schools, colleges somehow. Well, same was the case with me. However, look at me. This time around, I just found this quote and I was able to connect it with environmental psychology. I was just thinking that most of the students that we come across, they usually tend to dislike their schools. And I mean, you could just think of yourself when you were just a little baby and your parents were taking you to the school for the very first time. How was your first day at school? At least mine was not a very pleasant one. I cried throughout the day. And that's what most of the kids tell me. However, these days when I ask this question from the kids around, then they tell me that, well, my school, first day at school was okay, it was fine. So I was just thinking that why most of the kids, probably in my age and even these days, when they go to their schools for the first time, they don't like their school. And their initial interaction with the school is built upon a kind of a feeling that, Mommy, I don't want to go to school, something like that, you know. But why does that happen with all of the kids? क्यों सारे के सारे बच्चे स्कूल को किसी न किसी जगह पर जाकर नापसंद करते हैं या उनके अंदर थोड़ी सी aversion होती है schools की तरफ? And I just thought that maybe the environments in the school may be changed for better, ताकि बच्चे जब उन स्कूल के environments में जाएं तो वहाँ पर प्लेजेंट महसूस कर सकें। अब तक हमने एनवायरमेंटल साइकोलॉजी के जितने चैप्टर्स पढ़े हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट आई अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम दीज चैप्टर्स वर दैट एनवायरनमेंट इज़ अ वेरी वेरी पावरफुल फोर्स अराउंड अस। एनवायरनमेंट कैन मेक और ब्रेक individual human beings as well as great civilizations or countries. Environment is impacting our behavior in such delicate fashion and up to such minute details that we found out that most of the things in our environment are either compelling us towards certain behavioral patterns or they are discouraging us from performing certain behavioral patterns. Similarly, this quote from Mark Twain that I never let schools disturb my education, probably Mark Twain was thinking that environment around us is a greater teacher than the schools are. Because in schools there is controlled environment, but when we freely move around the world, there is a huge sphere of different elements, different things that are existing in that environment that are constantly impacting our behavior. And like people say that you don't learn much from the books, but you learn a lot from your experiences from moving around in the world. But that doesn't mean that books are not to be studied. In fact, nowadays, if you can study books, matter of fact, you should be reading a lot of books, not only the course books, but different novels, books of your favorite topics, and then you should combine that learning with your experiences in the environment. So my understanding was that there are so many different factors in the environment that are impacting our behavioral patterns, that are making us or breaking us. So in environmental psychology, all we are trying to do is to find out that what are those factors that are impacting our behavioral patterns so that हम उन factors को control कर सकें, उन factors के साथ manipulate कर सकें और behavioral patterns को बेहतर से बेहतर बना सकें या फिर ऐसे behaviors लोगों को सिखा सकें जो शायद उनके लिए positive हैं और ऐसे behaviors को eliminate कर सकें जो उनके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा negative हैं। वैसे जब हम environment की बात करते हैं और आजकल के ज़माने में environment की बात करते हैं तो एनवायरनमेंट के साथ जितने भी ज़्यादा इश्यूज़ हैं और आजकल ये इश्यूज़ बहुत ज़्यादा रेडिकल हो चुके हैं, ये दरअसल इंसानों के अंदर जो एटीट्यूड प्रॉब्लम्स हैं उसकी वजह से पेश आते हैं। देयर इज़ ग्रेट विल टू पावर व्हेन डिफरेंट कंट्रीज़ कम एट लॉगर हेड्स विद ईच अदर countries have been fighting with each other. There constantly have been battles, and in order to fuel this battle machinery, there has been huge industrialization, and as a result of this industrialization, there has been a lot of pollution coming up. So, students, the matter of fact is that it is basically the attitude that impacts people's behavioral patterns. And when we come to discuss the attitudes, we find out that environment impacts our behavior greatly and significantly. So probably what Mark Twain was saying was that schools are also the places where you learn, but environment is a great place where you learn a lot of things from your surroundings. Students, यहाँ से आज के लेक्चर का आगाज़ करते हैं और यहाँ पर लेक्चर के शुरू में मैं आपको एक छोटा सा रिव्यू देता जाता हूँ अपने पुराने लेक्चर के बारे में। हमने जो लास्ट लेक्चर के अंदर चीज़ें डिस्कस की, हम लास्ट लेक्चर के अंदर डिस्कस कर रहे थे कॉग्निटिव मैप्स को, और कॉग्निटिव मैप्स को हमने काफ़ी डिटेल में डिस्कस किया एंड वी फाइनली फिनिश्ड कॉग्निटिव मैप्स इन द लास्ट लेक्चर। हमने अपने आखिरी लेक्चर के अंदर ये डिस्कस किया कि वो कौन से फैक्टर्स हैं जो कॉग्निटिव मैप्स को इम्पैक्ट करते हैं। लेकिन इससे पहले मैं आपको थोड़ा सा ये बताता चलूँ कि कॉग्निटिव मैप्स दरअसल हैं क्या। कॉग्निटिव मैप्स हमारे मेंटल इमेजेस हैं। ये मेंटल इमेजेस हमारी एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में हैं जो हमारे जहन में रहते हैं। मिसाल के तौर पर अगर आप किसी को अपने घर का रास्ता समझाने की कोशिश करते हैं, तो आप जब फ़ोन पे किसी को अपने घर के रास्ते की तरफ गाइड कर रहे होते हैं, तो आपके जहन में एक मेंटल इमेज बनना शुरू हो जाता है उस शख्स की पोजीशन के हिसाब से और अपने घर की डायरेक्शन के हिसाब से, और इस कॉग्निटिव मैप के ज़रिए असर आप उस शख्स को गाइड करते जाते हैं अपने घर की तरफ। कॉग्निटिव मैप इज़ अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फिनोमिनन। कॉग्निटिव मैप्स हमारे जहन में जितने बेहतर से बेहतर बनेंगे, उतना ज़्यादा हमारी एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर पोजीशनिंग बेहतर होगी, हम उतना ज़्यादा अपनी एनवायरनमेंट को कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं और हम उतना ज़्यादा अपनी एनवायरनमेंट के साथ अडेप्ट कर सकते हैं, ना कि एनवायरनमेंट हमें हमारे ऊपर नेगेटिवली इम्पैक्ट करना शुरू करते हैं। स्टूडेंट्स, जब हमने कॉग्निटिव मैप्स की बात की तो हमने डिस्कस किया कि दो फैक्टर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं जो कॉग्निटिव मैप्स को इम्पैक्ट करते हैं। दीज टू फैक्टर्स आर नंबर 1 एनवायरमेंटल डिफरेंसेस and number 2 individual differences. Naturally, there are different types of environments. In some environments you feel happy, in certain other environments you don't really feel very good. But simultaneously, there are certain individuals who would feel in certain kind of environment happier than other individuals. जिसका मतलब ये है कि cognitive maps के अंदर जब impact होता है environment की तरफ से, तो इसके साथ ही साथ इंडिविजुअल के अपने एटीट्यूड्स, अपने ख्यालात भी उसके अंदर मैटर करते हैं। इंडिविजुअल्स को बाज़ चीज़ें पसंद हैं, बाज़ चीज़ें नापसंद हैं। मुझे कुछ चीज़ें पसंद हो सकती हैं, कुछ एनवायरनमेंट्स मुझे पसंद हो सकती हैं, हो सकता है कि आपको वो एनवायरनमेंट्स नापसंद हों। सो दिस इज़ द इंडिविजुअल फैक्टर। स्टूडेंट्स, जब हम इंडिविजुअल फैक्टर पर बात करते हैं तो वो क्या चीज़ है जो एनवायरनमेंट को हमारे लिए क्लियर करती है, वो क्या चीज़ है, वो क्या फैक्टर्स हैं जिनके तहत हम एनवायरनमेंट को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। एंड वी फाउंड आउट दैट देयर इज़ अ रिकग्नाइजेबिलिटी फार्मूला in order to interpret the environment. According to this recognizability formula, recognizability is a function of centrality of the population flow as well as architectural or social distinctiveness of a place. And I told you that R is equal to function of C into D, which means किसी भी एरिया को जब हम recognize करते हैं या किसी भी एरिया की जो recognizability होती है, उसके अंदर दो फैक्टर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं कि उस एरिया के अंदर पॉपुलेशन का फ्लो कितना है, और नंबर 2 उस जगह का आर्किटेक्चरल या सोशल डिस्टिंक्टिवनेस कैसी है। स्टूडेंट्स, जब हम कॉग्निटिव मैप्स की बात करते हैं तो इस रिकग्नाइजेबिलिटी फार्मूला के तहत हम ये जान सकते हैं कि किसी एक एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर वो क्या एलिमेंट्स होते हैं जो उस जगह को किसी के लिए समझना आसान बना देते हैं या उस जगह को किसी के लिए इम्पैक्टफुल बना देते हैं। इस रिकग्नाइजेबिलिटी फार्मूला के तहत हम ये चीज़ें जान सकते हैं। यहाँ से स्टूडेंट्स, मैंने आपको बताना शुरू किया कि हमारे कॉग्निटिव मैप्स के अंदर बाज़-औक़ात गलतियाँ भी होती हैं। ज़रूरी नहीं कि मैं किसी भी चीज़ के बारे में या किसी भी एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में जब एक मेंटल इमेज बनाता हूँ अपने जहन के अंदर, तो वो इमेज हकीकत के ऊपर मबनी हो। हमने ये देखा कि कुछ एरर्स हम कंसिस्टेंटली करते जाते हैं अपने एनवायरनमेंट के मैप्स बनाने में। दोज एरर्स वर, नंबर 1, बाज़-औक़ात हम इनकम्प्लीट मैप्स बनाते हैं। हम ज़्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन हासिल करने से पहले ही उस मैप को बनाना शुरू कर देते हैं। इट मीन्स दैट व्हेन आवर मैप इज़ बेस्ड अपॉन इनकम्प्लीट इंफॉर्मेशन, देन वी आर नॉट प्रॉपरली अवेयर ऑफ दैट प्लेस और दैट पर्टिकुलर एनवायरनमेंट। The second error that we make while we are building up these cognitive maps is distortion, which means that we sometimes place certain areas close to each other. हम मुख्तलिफ जगहों को ग्रुप करने की कोशिश करते हैं और बाज़ औक़ात चंद फैक्टर्स ऐसे होते हैं जिनके ज़ेरे असर हम चीज़ों को एक दूसरे के करीब देखना शुरू कर देते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पर अगर चीज़ें आपस में मिलती जुलती हैं तो हम उनको एक क्लोज रेफरेंस के अंदर देखते हैं, लेकिन अगर चीज़ें बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्टिंक्ट हैं, डिफरेंट हैं, तो हम शायद ये कह सकते हैं कि ये चीज़ें एक दूसरे से दूर पाई जाती हैं. हमारे कॉग्निटिव मैप्स के अंदर डिस्टॉर्शंस आती हैं. मसलन अगर आप ऑफिस रोज़ जाते हैं और आपका ऑफिस आपके घर से काफ़ी दूर है और शायद आपके लिए एक रोज़मर्रा का मामूल हो और आपको अपना ऑफिस इतना दूर ना लगता हो, लेकिन आपका एक दोस्त आपसे मिलने के लिए आता है और वो आपके साथ आपके घर से आपके ऑफिस तक जाता है, तो ही probably will come to say, man, your office is too far away from your home. And over there, you would say, I never really found that out. You go to my office every other day, and I really don't feel that my office is so far away. So there is an individual difference in the cognitive map of both of these people. Then we sometimes augment things in our cognitive maps, which means हम environment के अंदर ऐसी चीज़ों को प्लेस करना शुरू कर देते हैं जो दरअसल वहाँ पर नहीं पाई जाती. मसलन आप किसी सुपरमार्केट के अंदर जाते हैं तो आपके जहन में सुपरमार्केट का एक स्ट्रक्चर है. उस स्ट्रक्चर के मुताबिक काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें आप यूजुअली अपने कॉग्निटिव मैप के अंदर जो सुपरमार्केट के बारे में है उन चीज़ों को ऐड करते रहते हैं. अब आप एक ऐसी सुपरमार्केट में जाते हैं जिसमें उन एलिमेंट्स में से कोई चीज़ें मिसिंग हैं, तो शायद आपका दिमाग जब आप उस सुपरमार्केट को याद कर रहे हैं, आपके दिमाग के अंदर वो चीज़ें आना शुरू हो जाएंगी जो दरअसल सुपरमार्केट के अंदर प्रेजेंट नहीं थी. मिसाल के तौर पर अ सर्टेन स्टोर, मिसाल के तौर पर अ सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ शॉप which actually is not placed in that supermarket, but when you imagine that supermarket, you come to think that maybe that shop was actually there in that supermarket. Sometimes we are making the error of under-prominence and over-prominence. मिसाल के तौर पर बाज़ जगह हमारे लिए बहुत ज़्यादा prominent होती हैं किसी एक certain environment के अंदर और बाज़ जगह हमारे लिए prominent नहीं होती. दरअसल इसकी वजह ये भी हो सकती है कि शायद वो जगह इतनी prominent नहीं है या उनका social architectural structure इतना यूनिक नहीं है या इतना इम्पैक्टफुल नहीं है या शायद वहाँ पर पॉपुलेशन का फ्लो इतना ज़्यादा नहीं है जिसकी वजह से हम उन चीज़ों को अंडर प्रोमिनेंट समझते हैं. और बाज़ जगह जिनका आर्किटेक्चरल स्ट्रक्चर कुछ इस तरह का है कि वो इमीडिएटली स्टैंड आउट होता है, स्ट्राइक आउट होता है और शायद वहाँ पर पॉपुलेशन का फ्लो भी थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा है जिसकी वजह से वो चीज़ें हमारे लिए ज़्यादा प्रोमिनेंट हो जाती हैं. स्टूडेंट्स, यहाँ से हमने डिस्कस किया कि एनवायरनमेंट की परसेप्शन के अंदर जब इंडिविजुअल्स अपने कॉग्निटिव मैप्स बनाते हैं तो उसके अंदर इंडिविजुअल डिफरेंसेस भी होते हैं. कुछ लोग कॉग्निटिव मैप्स दूसरे लोगों से ज़्यादा बेहतर बना सकते हैं, कुछ लोगों के अंदर कॉग्निटिव मैप्स बनाने की सलाहियत दूसरे लोगों की निस्बत ज़्यादा हो सकती है. और यहाँ पर हमने काफ़ी सारी रिसर्चेस का जिक्र किया और मुख्तलिफ फैक्टर्स देखे जो किसी इंडिविजुअल के अंदर उसको डिस्टिंक्ट कर सकते हैं कॉग्निटिव मैप्स के अंदर. इंडिविजुअल डिफरेंसेस की जब हम बात करते हैं तो सबसे पहले हमने देखा कि जेंडर डिफरेंसेस काफ़ी ज़्यादा हैं. Most of the researches that have been conducted in this area, they have found out that males usually tend to make better cognitive maps than females. Males tend to exhibit higher levels of cognitive organization, such as using more mileage estimates, cardinal directions, and when males are telling directions to people, then they usually have a very accurate perception of the distance between two different places, as well as they usually tend to remember different cardinal features of a certain passage or of a certain way. Usually, distance judgments of women are more affected by change in travel paths through a city occasioned by the construction of new connecting street than were men. औरतों के अंदर ये देखा गया कि जब उनको अपना रास्ता चेंज करना पड़ता है और किसी एक जगह पर पहुंचने के लिए उन्हें दूसरे रास्ते से गुजरना पड़ता है तो अमूमन रास्ते को लंबा समझना शुरू कर देती हैं. And women base their judgments on inferences from travel paths while men approach the task in more spatial manner. औरतें अमूमन अपने रास्तों के जो अंदाज़े लगाती हैं उनको travel paths के ज़रिए से आइडेंटिफाई करने की कोशिश करती हैं. Like I said before, that ladies usually tend to place two locations according to the passage that connects these two places and the passage that they have been frequenting in order to go from place A to place B. However, when it comes down to men, they usually tend to focus more upon the spatial side of this cognitive map. Students, we then found out that there are socioeconomic differences also. Now, when we talk about socioeconomic differences, it has been found out that people who come from the higher socioeconomic backgrounds, they usually tend to form better cognitive maps than the people who come from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Then experience also plays a huge role. अगर आप किसी एक जगह पर बार बार जाते हैं, आपका उस जगह पर जाने का बहुत ज़्यादा तजर्बा है, then you would tend to see that place as probably closer to yourself. If your impression about that place is good, then probably you would tend to feel good about that particular environment. Individual differences may be because of the familiarity factor also. People draw more accurate and detailed maps of areas in which they have had more experience. इसके साथ ही साथ mobility is also a very, very important factor. And when we talk about mobility, then it means that किसी एक जगह पर आपका आना जाना कितना ज़्यादा है. If a husband works and wife stays at home, it is not surprising that the husband would develop a better cognitive map of areas beyond the immediate neighborhood. Students, we then discuss the functions of the cognitive maps. Cognitive maps दरअसल हमें अपने आप को इस दुनिया में कंडक्ट करने में क्या मदद फराहम करते हैं. And we found out that there are different types of functions, very, very important functions that are attached with the utility of cognitive maps. The very fact that we can build up the cognitive maps is actually a tool for us to help us conduct ourselves very, very effectively in this world. And different functions that these cognitive maps serve include, number one, adaptation. Adaptation is a very, very important concept. Cognitive maps are important for our ability to move around in our environment. जब हम किसी environment के अंदर move around करते हैं, किसी environment के अंदर अपने आप को effectively conduct करते हैं, तो cognitive maps हमें बहुत ज़्यादा help out करते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पर अगर आप अपने immediate surrounding से निकलकर किसी totally strange जगह पर चले जाते हैं, मसलन आप पाकिस्तान से किसी बाहर के मुल्क में जाकर पढ़ना शुरू कर देते हैं या कुछ अरसे के लिए रहना शुरू करते हैं वहाँ पर, you will immediately or initially find out कि आपको वहाँ पर रास्ते नहीं मिलते और आपको रास्ते याद रखना काफ़ी मुश्किल, उसमें काफ़ी मुश्किल का सामना करना पड़ता है आपको. दरअसल ये होता इस वजह से है कि आपका कॉग्निटिव मैप्स उस जगह के बारे में बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रांगली नहीं बन पाए होते. लेकिन जब हम अडेप्टेशन की बात करते हैं तो जब तक आपको उस जगह पर रास्तों का पता नहीं चलेगा, आप उस जगह के बारे में कॉग्निटिव मैप्स इफेक्टिवली नहीं बना सकेंगे, आप अपने आप को उस एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर प्रॉपरली इफेक्टिवली कंडक्ट नहीं कर पाएंगे. और जब आप कंडक्ट नहीं कर पाएंगे तो दैट मीन्स योर अडेप्टेशन इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एनवायरनमेंट इज़ काइंड ऑफ पुअर. So if you happen to be a student in a university out of your country, then you better find out the ways very soon and you learn them and you remember them as soon as possible, because otherwise you would not be able to build up the cognitive maps, and chances are that if you persist in this for some time, then you would start thinking that your experience of studying in a university out of your country is probably not being very good, and this frustration can eventually cause you to maybe not score very good in your semester, not score very good in your exam. So the entire educational experience might be jeopardized. So students, you see that adaptation is a very, very important function that cognitive maps serve us. Cognitive maps help us move around in our environment and build our adaptability in our environment. The next important function that cognitive maps serve include problem solving. Now, problem solving is a very, very important phenomena because in our life, we are constantly solving problems. Matter of fact, life is all about different types of problems, and our intellect is all about solving those different types of problems. The more problems that you solve, the more successful you would be in your life. I can give you a very different perspective over here. When people apply for different jobs in different organizations, then sometimes an advice can be given to them that in order to excel in that particular organization, you need to concentrate upon your job. And your job is actually a set of problems that has been given to you, which you will be constantly solving in order to help that organization run. Which means problem solving is a very, very important phenomena. लोग अपनी जॉब को प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग के रेफरेंस से अप्रोच कर सकते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पर एक यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर एक गार्ड से लेके उस यूनिवर्सिटी के डायरेक्टर तक सब लोग किसी न किसी मसले को सॉल्व कर रहे होते हैं. गार्ड के पास अपने प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, टीचर्स के पास अपने प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, स्टूडेंट्स के पास अपने प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट, देयर आर डिफरेंट सेट्स ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स दैट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट अ यूनिवर्सिटी. And these different sets of problems are actually helping that university meet with its objective. So everybody right from the guard up to the director, including the students, is there in the university to solve certain kinds of problems. And as long as they go on solving those problems, that university would run smoothly, it would function effectively. So problem solving is a very, very important phenomenon. Now, cognitive maps play a great role in problem solving, which means problem solving is the art of making decisions about where things are that we need and how to get them. Every time you come across a problem, first of all, you tell yourself that I need to get down to my bearings. I need to find out कि मेरे पास कौन से resources हैं. उन resources को आप अपने mind के अंदर किस तरह से place करते हैं. अगर आपने अपने resources को properly visualize नहीं किया, आपने अपने resources को properly identify नहीं किया, तो आप उनको utilize नहीं कर सकेंगे. फिर आप अपने resources की strength को भी जानने की कोशिश करते हैं. और इन सारी चीज़ों के इर्द गिर्द आप एक कॉग्निटिव मैप बनाते जाते हैं अपने आप को इफेक्टिवली उन प्रॉब्लम्स को सॉल्व करने में मदद देने के लिए. सो स्टूडेंट्स, यू सॉ दैट कॉग्निटिव मैप्स सर्व एज द ग्रेट फंक्शन ऑफ प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग. We then come down to the process, the function of communication. Communication is a very, very important phenomenon. In fact, what differentiates human beings from animals is the very skilled art of communication. We human beings are very, very smart in communicating, which is why we understand the things immediately and instantly. If you look at the evolution of the human beings, or if you look at the history of the human beings on this planet Earth, this was actually the way to get better ways, get better tools to communicate with each other in order to survive as a group of human beings. Now, communication means that when we understand our environment, we need to interpret it. And when we interpret it, then we need to describe this interpretation to someone else. मिसाल के तौर पर इंसानों के different groups जब एक दूसरे के साथ काम कर रहे होते हैं, तो हर जगह के ऊपर, हर organization के अंदर या हर specific group के अंदर कुछ खास terminologies होती हैं, जिनको हम jargons के तौर पर यूज़ करते हैं. एक हॉस्पिटल के अंदर जो डॉक्टर्स के जार्गन्स हैं बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंट होंगे. एक यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर जो टीचर्स के जार्गन्स हैं वो डिफरेंट होंगे. स्टूडेंट्स के जो जार्गन्स हैं वो डिफरेंट होंगे. एंड इफ अ डॉक्टर कम्स टू सिट विद द स्टूडेंट्स इन अ सर्टेन यूनिवर्सिटी, मे बी ही वुड नॉट बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द jargon of the students. However, when students are talking to each other with reference to that jargon, then they immediately understand that what is meant to be said. Similar is the case with the doctors, similar could be the case with the professors. Matter of fact, jargons are very, very common with all types of professions, with all types of different levels of living as an individual or as a social animal or living as a human being in the perspective of society. And while we do this, communication becomes very, very important for us. So cognitive maps actually help us build not only our perceptions about the environment, but we come to find out different words through which we can communicate our cognitive maps to other people. So students, you saw that cognitive maps also help us communicate. And if our cognitive map is better, then our communication will definitely get much better. Students, at this point of time, I would like to take you from cognitive maps into the environmental evaluation, because so far we have discussed enough concepts that we are now thoroughly prepared to understand the concept of environmental evaluation. Now, what is environmental evaluation? Matter of fact, the question is how we come to evaluate our environment favorably or unfavorably. It's a very simple fact that you would be liking certain places and you would be disliking certain places. But have you ever asked yourself कि आप कुछ जगहों को क्यों पसंद करते हैं और कुछ जगहों को क्यों नापसंद करते हैं? अगर आप उन फैक्टर्स के ऊपर गौर करना शुरू करें, तो you will come across very interesting findings. There might be, you might be able to pinpoint certain elements, certain objects in a certain environment because of which you come to appreciate it favorably or because of which you come to appreciate it unfavorably. So, when we are talking about environmental evaluation in general terms, we find out that people prefer and approach environments they evaluate positively. Now, connecting it back to the quote of Mark Twain, I never let schools disturb my education, and we also discussed that most of the kids tend to dislike their schools. They harbor some kind of negative feelings about their schools. Now, this particular point from environmental evaluation, which is a very, very general point that goes to say that people prefer and approach environments they evaluate positively. Now, when the kids negatively evaluate their schools, probably they do not like the environments in the schools. And that is why instead of approaching the schools, they are actually avoiding the schools. Now, people avoid environments they come to evaluate unfavorably. Now, it again falls into place that since kids come to evaluate the environment of the school very, very negatively, which is why they tend to avoid schools, which is why they tend to go away from the schools. Students, from this point onwards, we will discuss in detail that what are those factors that help a person evaluate an environment, and what are those factors that give a person a positive or negative evaluation of a certain environment. At this point of time, I would like to tell you a small story. This is the story of a sick little kid. Let us imagine that this kid's name was Ahmed. Ahmed was a 4 years old little baby, a child. अहमद एक बहुत खुशगवार बच्चा था और पेरेंट्स उसको बहुत प्यार करते थे. अहमद का एक बड़ा भाई था जो अहमद का बहुत ज़्यादा ख्याल रखता था. 4 साल की उम्र के वक्त अहमद के वालिदैन ने सोचा कि अहमद को स्कूल में एडमिट करवा दिया जाए. So Ahmed has had his first day at school and it didn't go very, very pleasant. And his experience was built upon this foundation of his first day at the school. And he tended to evaluate the school negatively. कुछ अरसे बाद अहमद की तबीयत आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख़राब होना शुरू हो जाती है. Ahmed reports frequent headaches, especially in the night times. Parents are very, very concerned about Ahmed's health. So they take him to doctor. Doctor examines Ahmed. He asks him different questions and he gives different types of tests. And Ahmed gets those tests conducted upon himself through different laboratories. Now, the doctors find out that everything is okay with Ahmed, but this reporting of frequent headache is actually becoming a bigger problem. So the parents take him from one doctor to another doctor and yet another doctor, and from doctors to doctors, nobody comes to find out that what is the reason of this headache. And now, sometimes Ahmed also reports fatigue, and off and on, Ahmed is having fever. At this point of time, parents go very, very depressed, and they are just banking upon the hope from wherever it comes from. And one of their friends, he tells them that there is a doctor in a village that is near to our city, and I have heard कि उस डॉक्टर के हाथ में बहुत ज़्यादा शफा है. और अहमद के पेरेंट्स डिसाइड करते हैं कि अहमद को उस डॉक्टर के पास ले जाया जाए. So one day, early in the morning, their parents get into their car and take Ahmed out of town. Soon as Ahmed starts getting out of town in the car, the scene around him starts changing. The environment from the busy, hectic, thick traffic environment of the city, the traffic gradually starts thinning around, and the buildings and different complicated structures, they start giving way to greenery and fields, and eventually they get into large fields. Ahmed feels very, very pleasant in this environment. Now, the parents come to the village and they start walking towards the clinic. Ahmed just visualizes the entire village. He feels very pleasant over there. There is so much greenery, and Ahmed can see far away to large distances. He's very, very happy over there, and he very happily goes to the doctor. And the doctor, on the other hand, is also a very pleasant personality. He asks Ahmed different questions, and he also builds up a very good rapport and friendship with Ahmed. Ahmed is having a wonderful experience. Ahmed comes back home from the doctor, and Ahmed feels that everything is okay. He did not report any headaches during the next 7 days. Another 7 days pass by, and Ahmed reports another headache, and they take him to the same doctor again. And the doctor does the same thing. And Ahmed gradually starts getting okay. He finds very fine. So what do you think is happening with Ahmed? Why is Ahmed feeling very good with this doctor and going to the village? Would you like to know about that? Would you like to concentrate on that? Well, I could give you one clue. Probably Ahmed's first day at school was not very good. He didn't feel good about the environment. he didn't feel good about the environment of the city, and from that point onwards, Ahmed started feeling that he's been encaged, that he's been prisoned, and he just wanted to escape from it. And he started reporting headaches which probably were psychogenic. But when the parents took him out of the city, he came out of the cage. He saw large, wide open spaces, green fields, clean environment, and he felt very happy. In fact, he felt very happy meeting with the doctor also, because he actually became his friend. So it was all helping Ahmed escape from that feeling of encaged in the school. Now, environment changed, and Ahmed's response also changed. This environment significantly impacted Ahmed's health. So from reporting headaches, now Ahmed reports that he's feeling very good and he's actually very happy about himself. So students, what is it in that environment that is actually impacting Ahmed's health or Ahmed's behavior? और अहमद को वो environment क्यों इतना ज़्यादा पसंद आता है? अहमद गांव के इस environment को इतना favorably evaluate किस तरह से करता है? हम अपने subsequent part of the discussion में ये जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि हम environment को कैसे positively या negatively evaluate करते हैं. लेकिन उससे पहले हमारे लिए जानना ये ज़रूरी है कि फेवरेबल एवैल्यूएशन दरअसल होती क्या है. किसी जगह पर प्लेजेंट फील करना या किसी जगह को प्लेजेंटली एवैल्यूएट करना, दरअसल इसका क्या मतलब है? ऑफ कोर्स दिस इज़ अ लिटरेरी टर्मिनोलॉजी और दिस इज़ अ वर्ड ऑफ द ग्रामर दैट वी लाइक सर्टन प्लेस, बट व्हाट डू वी एक्चुअली मीन? वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस कॉन्सेप्ट सो दैट वी कुड dig it out in more scientific fashion in order to understand something out of it. And once we understand something out of it, then we can use certain principles that we can apply so that people come to like their environments more favorably in the future. Students, when we talk about favorable evaluation, this can have different meanings, like preference for certain configuration of stimuli in some environments over that of other environments. Students, हम अब तक environment को मुख्तलिफ औकात में इस चैप्टर के अंदर और इससे पिछले चैप्टर्स के अंदर डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ स्टिमुलाई के अंदर डीकम्पोज करने की कोशिश करते रहे हैं. दरअसल हम ये जानने की कोशिश करते हैं कि एनवायरनमेंट को हम कितने पार्ट्स के अंदर डिवाइड कर सकते हैं ताकि हम उन पार्ट्स का इम्पैक्ट ह्यूमन बिहेवियर के ऊपर देख सकें. एंड वी कैन से दैट स्टिमुलाई आर डिफरेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूटिंग यूनिट्स ऑफ अ सर्टेन एनवायरनमेंट. हर एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर मुख्तलिफ किस्म की चीज़ें, मुख्तलिफ किस्म के स्टिमुलाई उस इन्वायरमेंट के इनहेबिटेंट्स को या जो लोग उस इन्वायरमेंट के अंदर हैं उनको इम्पैक्ट कर रहे होते हैं. नाउ आवर क्वेश्चन वाज दैट व्हाट इज़ फेवरेबल एवैल्यूएशन, व्हाट डू वी एक्चुअली मीन बाय फेवरेबल एवैल्यूएशन, एंड वी सेड दैट प्रेफरेंस फॉर सर्टेन कॉन्फ़िगरेशन ऑफ स्टिमुलाई इन सम एनवायरनमेंट्स ओवर दैट ऑफ अदर एनवायरनमेंट्स. किसी एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर कुछ स्टिमुलाई कुछ इस तरह से अपने आप को अरेंज करती हैं, ऑर्गेनाइज करती हैं कि वो स्टिमुलाई हमें प्लेजेंट फीलिंग देती हैं somehow. Now this is probably getting a little systematic, a little bit scientific, because when we say that there is a different set of stimuli and they are configured in a specific order to give rise to pleasant feeling or the feeling of a pleasant evaluation about a certain environment in different individuals who are existing in that environment. Now, if we go by this route, if we try to understand it from this point of view, then we can identify that what those stimuli could be. However, there could be another way to understand that what is favorable evaluation of environment. The other way might be cognitive judgment of beauty, which means that how we come to appreciate beauty. What is beautiful for me? What is beautiful for you? Well, that reminds me of a verse from the poem of a great English poet whose name was John Keats. And he tried to define beauty in this verse when he said, "A thing of beauty is joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness." Which means a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Something that's beautiful, it's constantly giving you pleasure. It's constantly giving you pleasant feelings about yourself. And in another poem, he says, "Beauty is truth and truth is beauty." Now, this is a very philosophical appreciation of beauty, where John Keats says that all those things in life that are true are beautiful, and all those things that are beautiful are actually true. Well, getting away from the philosophical appreciation of the beauty and getting into the cognitive judgment of beauty, we can say that people might come to perceive different things in different fashions. What is beautiful for me might not be beautiful for you. There is yet another way to understand that what is positive evaluation of an environment. Positive affective reaction to the environment. What makes me feel good? In some places, I just go, feel happy, I smile. I just like that place. I don't know why I like it, but I simply like that place. And that creates a positive effect inside me. Did it ever happen to you? Of course. It happens with everyone. There are certain places where you go and you feel that you are in a very good mood. Now, what is in that environment that is impacting your mood, that is giving you a positive, pleasant mood? Students, let me cap up these three points that we discussed, that when we come to evaluate environments positively, it probably may mean that in that environment there are different stimuli that have configured them or organized themselves in a certain fashion that they impact human beings in such a way that they come to evaluate that environment in a positive way. Positive evaluation of the environment could be cognitive judgment of beauty, where people differ from each other. There could be lots of individual differences in that. And we can give positive evaluation to an environment if it gives a better mood in us, if it creates a better emotional impact inside us. Do you want to know answer to the question, what is actually the favorable evaluation? Well, the science actually progressed not through the answers, but through the questions. It is the questions that have been the driving force of the progress behind the science. And just like any other science, in environmental psychology, different psychologists have come forward and they have tried to answer this question in a scientific fashion, but with holding to different types of standpoints, different types of viewpoints. Over here, first of all, I would like to tell you about the model that came from a psychologist whose name was Kaplan. We can call it Kaplan's model. Now, what is Kaplan's model? Kaplan actually wanted to concentrate over the question that why people like certain places and why people dislike certain other places. So the main question was, would you rather be here or there? Would you want to come here or there? Do you like this type of place or do you like that type of place? Do you like this type of environment or another type of environment? And why do you do that? Kaplan proposed a model to identify or to find out the answer to these questions way back in 1975. Kaplan actually developed a model to predict preferences of some environments over the others. Now, with science, prediction is a very, very important phenomenon. Like I told you before, that every time we tend to break down environment into different parts, we actually would want to identify that what are those individual parts that constitute environment and what is their individual impact upon the behavior of the people, so that we could identify them, we could code them, and we could manipulate with the environment in the future. Which means that prediction is a very, very important part of any model. Any model should be able to predict that what would be the behavior of the people. And Kaplan was doing exactly the same thing. His model was actually to predict preferences of some environments over other. The model actually provides a link between environmental cognition and evaluation, which means how we perceive environment, how we understand environment, how we get information about the environment, and how we evaluate that information positively. There are some basic assumptions in the Kaplan's model which are very important to be understood. And those include, number one, information content of an environment is an important dimension of environmental evaluation. किसी भी environment के अंदर एक information content होता है. मसलन आप supermarket जाएं, या आप cinema जाएं, या आप school जाएं, या park जाएं, या picnic के लिए आप किसी पहाड़ी इलाके में चले जाएं, हर जगह का information content different होगा, diverse होगा. आप हर जगह पर जाकर मुख्तलिफ किस्म की information के हिसाब से उस environment को perceive कर सकते हैं. मसलन अगर आप पहाड़ी इलाके में जाते हैं तो आपको वो सीनरी इतनी पसंद आती है, आपको समुंदर से हायर एल्टीट्यूड पर कम ऑक्सीजन और प्लेजेंट एनवायरनमेंट का एहसास शायद आपके अराउजल लेवल को बढ़ाए, एंड मे बी यू वुड कम टू एवेल्युएट इट पॉजिटिवली So there is different types of information in the environment, and Kaplan actually concentrated upon the information content of an environment. Then he said that basis for preference is an individual's ability in visualizing that information in different perspectives. First of all, when you go in an environment, can you make sense of that environment? क्या आपको वो environment आसानी से समझ आती है? Individuals अपनी preferences इस बात के ऊपर बना सकते हैं. अगर आपको वो environment आसानी से समझ आ जाती है तो शायद वो environment आपके लिए boring हो. अगर वो environment आपको बहुत ज़्यादा complicated लगती है तो शायद आप उस environment को सोचते सोचते या हल करते करते थक जाएं. तो environment का information content क्या होना चाहिए या environment के अंदर क्या खसूसियात होनी चाहिए that people could come to make sense of it, and that making sense of it could give them a positive evaluation of their environment. Number 2 was extent to which an environment involves individual by motivating him or her to try to comprehend it. कुछ environments ऐसे होते हैं जहाँ पर जाके you feel motivated because you want to understand that particular environment. I remember a friend of mine once told me that he took his grandfather to Murray. That is a great hill station, very cool, very calm, very pleasant. And when his grandfather reached Murray, he actually felt very good about it. He told me that his father had never visited Murray before in his entire lifetime. So this was the first time of his entire lifetime that he was being on a place where he could actually watch the snow. And this was a great, great experience for his grandfather. And he also told me that his grandfather was curious like a baby. He wanted to go to different places, he wanted to touch the snow, he wanted to make the balls out of it. He was actually very, very happy. Now, we can say that my friend's grandfather was actually extremely motivated to understand that new environment, to come to comprehend that new environment. So students, going back to the Kaplan's basic assumptions, and just to give you a reminder, individuals base their preference for certain environments upon 2 factors. First of all, can they make sense of it? Number 2, is there something in that environment that motivates them to learn more about that particular environment? Students, based upon these 2 assumptions, Kaplan came up with a model. This is the model of the 4 factors. He found out that there are 4 factors that are very, very important in an environment. And these 4 factors actually can help people make sense of that particular environment or can motivate people to learn more about that environment. Let us first see that what are these 4 factors and how they interplay or how they interact and how people base their preference of certain environments and how can we interpret their preferences based upon these 4 factors. I would like to take you to this slide. The 4 factors can be divided into 2 basic groups. Group number 1 is ability to make sense of the environment, and group number 2 is involvement with the environment. When we come to the group number 1, where there are factors that help someone make sense of the environment, there are 2 important points here. Number 1 is coherence, and number 2 is legibility. Coherence means the degree to which the elements of a setting are organized or they fit together, which means that how organized an environment is. Legibility means the orderly fashion and the ease with which an individual can process and categorize the elements of the setting. Students, you saw that these 2 factors, coherence and legibility, are very, very important in order for someone to make sense of that particular environment. Matter of fact, you could learn from your own experiences that whenever you go on different places, if those places are coherent and if those places are organized, then you can make sense of those places in much better way. Misal ke taur par, usually when you go to a new place, you tend to lose the ways initially because you probably are not able to see organization in that particular place. However, after some time, you are able to organize, you are able to have an organized perception of that particular place. Now, अगर आप अपने कमरे को देखें, तो अगर आपका कमरा, आपका bedroom properly organized है, and if your friend comes in, he can easily make sense of the bedroom, which means it is very easy for him to understand the bedroom. However, if your bedroom is dirty, if your bedroom is very, very untidy, and there are different things in the bedroom, then that means there is less organization in that bedroom, and the newcomer might not probably feel very good in that environment. Now, same is the case with legibility. Legibility means that how different things, different elements of environment fit together in the harmonious fashion. If different elements of an environment are fitting together very, very harmoniously, then this will be easy for people to understand that particular environment. Now, let us go back to the slide in order to see that what were the next two factors. The next two factors actually address the issue of involvement with the environment. And these are number one, complexity, and number two, mystery. When we talk about complexity, this means the number and variety of elements. किसी एक environment के अंदर complexity उसके elements से मिलकर बनती है. Environments उस वक्त complex होना शुरू हो जाते हैं जब उसके अंदर elements की तादाद ज़्यादा होनी शुरू हो जाए. जब elements की तादाद किसी environment के अंदर ज़्यादा होनी शुरू हो जाती है तो usually it becomes kind of untidy place because there is so much information content in that environment for people to come to comprehend it properly. Now, अगर उन elements के अंदर diversity भी बहुत ज़्यादा है, वो बहुत मुख्तलिफ किस्म के elements हैं, which means that there's so much variety of elements in that particular environment, then that would become really, really complex. And when things get complex, people would try to solve those things. People would try to learn more about things. Now, how can they actually come to group it together in a harmonious, coherence, or legible fashion? The next is the mystery in an environment. Mystery is the degree to which the setting has hidden information that captures the viewer's imagination. किसी भी environment के अंदर जो information missing है, things that you don't find out easily, but you find out hints for those things in that environment. When such environment is organized in such a fashion and it is hinting towards different things, then people tend to comprehend that environment. People tend to feel motivated that they want to learn more about this particular environment. Students, so these were the four factors that are in a certain environment, according to Kaplan, that help individuals interest, that help individuals find out that if they would positively evaluate that environment or if they would negatively evaluate that environment. We found out that these four factors could be grouped together in two ways. Number one is the factors that help people make sense of an environment, and number two are the factors that motivate people to learn more about that environment. Now, how these four factors impact? Number one, people prefer environments high on coherence and legibility to those that are low on these factors. Like we said before, while we were talking about different examples, that all those environments which are more legible or more coherent, people tend to prefer them, according to Kaplan. The next is greater degree of complexity and mystery produce preference for a setting, which means that if a certain environment is very complex or very, very mysterious, then people would like to learn more about that environment. Imagine yourself that from your school or college's laboratory, you actually go into a very high-class factory where the computer chips are being manufactured. It's a very high-class, very technical, and very complicated factory. It is very, very big and very, very technical. You just actually be there and you are so interested in learning more about it because you have never seen that kind of laboratory before. Or maybe you go to the production unit of a certain factory. You will find out different things in that environment that you would not be able to understand. Once you would not be able to understand it, then that means the complexity and the mystery of that environment is increased manifold. For you to feel more motivated to learn about that particular environment. Kaplan also hinted upon the biological basis to preferences, that what are the biological basis to preferring certain environments, and he said that there is a survival value to preferring environments that offer informational advantage. Survival value, what is that? Students, we discussed while we were talking about the functions of cognitive maps that cognitive maps actually help us solve the problem. Now, Kaplan is saying something very, very similar when he says that there is survival value to preferring certain environments. In certain environments, our control over that environment is so good, our grasp on that environment is so good that we can actually solve all kinds of problems or maybe different types of problems in that particular environment. Maslan, agar aap apne school ke andar hai, you come here every day, you know about all of the places, so just knowing about your school, just learning about all of the places has a huge survival value for you because you can conduct yourself very, very effectively in your school. However, if a new student joins you and he comes from out of town, then survival value of that environment for this particular new student would be kind of low because this student will have to learn a lot about this environment before he could actually come to conduct himself more effectively in this school's environment, which is exactly what Kaplan said. He said there is a survival value to preferring environments that offer informational advantage. Now, if that particular school is organized in such a fashion that it is very easy for this student to gather information, then this has survival value for the students, which means when the new student joins in this school, and if the school's architecture is designed in such a way that this is more organized, this is more legible, and this environment also motivates that student to learn more about the school, then this entire survival value of this entire environment is huge for this student. He would learn it very soon, he would want to learn it every other day, and he would go on learning and learning. And once his learning is getting better and better, more effective, his stay in the school will become better, more comfortable, more effective. So students, you saw that different places have different survival values, and these survival values are actually with reference to the information content of that particular environment. Now that was the Kaplan's model. Now at this point, we have to move forward to our next model, and our next model is environmental aesthetics. Have you ever thought about the word aesthetics? What actually this means? Aesthetic is actually our sense to appreciate beauty, is actually our inner, uncanny, mysterious sense to understand beauty, to learn about beauty, to make things more beautiful. And when we talk about environmental aesthetics, it means that is the beauty in the eye of the beholder, which means that you like certain environments. Maybe that's because of yourself, because you saw the beauty in that environment. Another person might not be seeing beauty in that particular environment. So when we talk about it like this, it becomes very important for us to understand that what are the objective dimensions of environments that lead to judgments of the aesthetic beauty. What is it in an environment that makes us see that environment more beautiful? Is it something in the individual? Is it the way that individual looks at that environment that makes it appear more beautiful? Or is it something inside that particular environment that makes it look more beautiful for all of the individuals who are watching this? Questions like these will be discussed in detail and thoroughly in the environmental aesthetics. Students, at this point, हमारा वक्त ख़त्म हुआ चाहता है. हम इस इंटरेस्टिंग थ्योरी को अपने अगले लेक्चर के अंदर कवर करेंगे और ये जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि हम किसी चीज़ को खूबसूरत क्यों कहते हैं. क्या जब हम किसी चीज़ को खूबसूरत कहते हैं तो इसके अंदर हमारी आँख का कसूर होता है कि हम उस चीज़ को खूबसूरती के हिसाब से देख रहे हैं, या फिर उस चीज़ के अंदर कोई खूबसूरती का एलिमेंट पाया जाता है. ये सारे सवालात हम डिस्कस करेंगे in our next lecture. At this point of time, let me say goodbye to you, and I would like to say please do take very good care of yourself, stay happy, and study environmental psychology. Let us say goodbye. Allah Hafiz.